Hello, my name is Felix Ludozan, and I want to share with you a few personal stories related to my sports career, but also to my early childhood, so you will understand how much these experiences have shaped my business personality and are still influencing my daily job, while I'm hoping that you will take away some inspiration for yourself and for your families and friends. I will focus on four dimensions of human performance, but will also show you some simple sports mental techniques which can help you to improve your daily productivity. And finally, I will share with you my five pillars of well being. Before we get started, a little bit about me. I worked as a project manager at IBM for 12 years, and since 2007, I'm working as a program and PMO manager for BASF, a leading multinational chemical company having its headquarters in Germany. I am a PMI member and PMP certified since 2002. I have a master's in computer science, master's certificates in project management, sports mental coaching, and athlete management. And I played basketball. I was born and grew up in Romania. My father was Romanian and my mother was German, but since 1990, I live in Germany, having two citizenships. I'm married to a former basketball player from Germany, and I have a son who is a marketing student and college soccer goalkeeper in the United States. And I also have a daughter who is following the footsteps of her parents by playing basketball. When I'm talking to people about mental training or coaching, they often ask me about tricks to improve the personal performance. Now, honestly, I don't suggest any tricks, but simplified, I explain my point of view like this. I see four dimensions of human performance: foundation, acquired skills, mental state, and team. Now, let's see what it means in short. The foundation, here most of the people refer to what you are when you are born: your body with limbs, organs, your genes, so on. As an IT guy, I would say you are a complex hardware system with some extension capabilities and with an empty hard disk. But still, for me, foundation is more than that. It's also about all developments in the first 7 years of your life, which have by far the biggest impact for your future. Number two, acquired skills. This is about what you achieved during your life by hard work and learning. In computer language, it's primarily about software and hardware extensions acquired over the lifetime. If you would ask me about a good example of an athlete where this dimension is extremely strong, I would immediately say Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the best football players of all times. Compared to many others in the football business, Cristiano was not really blessed with the best physical foundation, but therefore he is one of the strongest hard workers you have ever seen in sports. Number three, mental state. You often hear that this is about your brain. But what is the brain? It is something very complex. That's why I will use a very simple description by saying that we have two brains. Number one, the limbic system or the primitive brain, a supercomputer which is steering every single process in your body, mostly the primal drives, including the things we like, the things we hate, and the things we fear. And then we have number two, the neocortex, the thinking part, the evolutionary youngest part of your brain, which distinguishes us from any other creature on this planet, but which is by far slower than the limbic system. In general, the limbic system and the neocortex have a symbiotic relationship. And the mental state strongly depends on the quality of this relationship. Team. This fourth dimension is, on one hand, the most fascinating, and on the other hand, the least explored one. It can undermine simple mathematical laws for which there is no clear explanation available. Now, looking at these four dimensions, it becomes clear that human performance is very flexible and that indeed almost everything is possible if you get the right mix. And this is valid for sports, for business, and for every other area of life. Let's have a deeper look into the foundation. I share the opinion of many scientists who are stating that the first 7 years of human life are crucial for our development, and that the environment is primarily shaping your behavior, your personality, and your personal well being. In simple words of an IT guy, it depends what content is uploaded to your fresh hard drive. And that includes what you see, what you hear, what you do, what you learn, and what you feel. Now let's have a look at my personal foundation. I was born and grew up in the 1970s in Sibiu, a beautiful city in Romania, European Capital of Culture in 2007, and home of the oldest German high school in Romania, founded in 1380, and where I had the honor to learn like the current president of Romania too. But before that, I spent the first 12 years of my life in a neighborhood of blocks of flats with hundreds of kids of different backgrounds. I remember the 15th of June was every year an important date in our life because this was the last school and kindergarten day before the start of the summer holidays, which in Romania last for 3 months. Now, what did we do the whole summer for 3 months? Without cable TV, without Netflix, without smartphones or computers, without internet. Now, we spent the whole day outside and came home only when we were hungry or when our parents chased us home when it was time to go to bed. Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi was a Swiss pedagogue and educational reformer who lived around the year 1800. He was a visionary man who revolutionized children's education from the one-sided classroom presentation of teaching content to a more active, understanding-oriented self-activity of the children. It's often called learning by head, heart, and hand. And this is how we learned during the summer holidays, using our head, heart, and hand. You know, in our days, preschool examinations show that children can indeed perfectly use their thumbs to use smartphones and tablets. But they have considerable difficulties holding a pencil or filling a glass of water with a water jug. Now, today I would say for us kids, the 15th of June was the end of school life and the beginning of the school of life, where I acquired my first project management skills and where I got to know my 5 pillars of well being, which are valid until today. Number one, stay connected. Talk to your friends every day. Number two, be active. We did sport every day. We played football, volleyball, basketball. We did running races, scooter races. Number 3, live in the moment. We were so focused on what we were doing outside that we simply forgot to go home or to eat. And you probably know this feeling too when you work on something exciting. Number 4, share. My father built this great and fast scooter for me, but I never hesitated to let the other kids use it too. And number 5, learn. We were so curious and explored every corner of the neighborhood. And sometimes we were too curious. So one day I came to learn about good communication, which is key for project management. Here's a story. You could always count on exciting action in our neighborhood: weddings, parties, disputes between neighbors, other types of drama like funerals, which are special in Romania, as the coffin is open during the ceremony. And that was something impressive for us, the curious kids. I must have been 6 years old, and I still remember that day when we crossed the main street and went 2 blocks further, where a big crowd attended a death ceremony. I managed somehow to slip through the crowd, and suddenly I was standing in front of the coffin, staring with big eyes at the body inside. It was a very hot day, and the candles around the coffin were almost melted, especially the one next to me, which was about to fall into the coffin. And there were 2 priests there singing loudly and scattering the incense around them. And one of them looked at the candle and then fixed my eyes and nodded. Then my perception was that he had a very important, urgent message. So I acted immediately to avoid a horrible fire in the coffin. What I did is I instantly blew out the candle and then expectantly turned my big eyes to the priest, waiting for an acknowledgement signal in his eyes. But unfortunately, his eyes were showing me that I did something wrong. And the eyes around me confirmed the same. So I decided spontaneously to run away and to escape through the crowd. After many years, I realized that this was the moment in my life where I learned forever that communication is key to success. Since then, whenever I'm not sure if I understood correctly, I ask again and again until it is clear to me. This is very important for any type of communication in your project, especially in negotiations and scope management activities, but also in the day-to-day communication when dealing with different cultures, languages, or dialects. So far about foundation. Let's move on to skills. When I was 8 years old, one day my father came earlier from work and he picked my sister and me outside and said, "You both are wasting your potential here in the yard. And now the time has come for you to join a sports club." So I ended up playing basketball in a club. And there I learned how to acquire and improve skills. It's all about hard work, discipline, and good organization, about being efficient and effective. It's in fact about learning and repeating again. It's about feeding your limbic system. If you stick with it forever, the long-term effect will be that you can do things forever. For example, it happened in the last years that I didn't play basketball for many months. But whenever I came back on the court, I could always achieve a reasonable hit rate from the free throw line. Why? Because it's burned into my limbic system. It's like walking or like cycling. Now, there's nothing I want to add about skills here. Just keep in mind, work hard, be disciplined, do it right, and do the right things. Now, let's talk about the mental state. I already mentioned a few times the two brains who strive to have a symbiotic relationship, the limbic system and the neocortex. As I'm anyway using a simplified language in this session, I will call them limbi and corti in between. Limbi is the supercomputer working a lot with patterns which are acquired over time, especially in the first 7 years of your life. While corti is smart, curious, and very creative, but far slower than limbi. Now, here's an example that illustrates this fact very well. I think many of you made this experience at least once in their life. You walk in the forest and suddenly you discover something on the trail which looks like a snake. And you immediately jump straight in the air and your heart rate rises up to 200 beats per minute. Now, this reaction is the work of your limbic system, of the supercomputer, who acts based on patterns. But then, after 1 or 2 seconds, the neocortex steps in when you realize that it's not a snake, but a tree root having a similar shape to a snake. So you see, compared to the limbic system, the neocortex needed much more time to process the situation. Corti brings us many cool features like thinking, reading, making jokes, estimating project efforts, or composing music. But particularly in sports, the neocortex can be disruptive. Thinking too much and being too curious during high performance sports activities is not helpful. And therefore, sports mental training helps athletes to minimize the neocortex activity during competition and achieve the best balance between the two brains. Let's take a deeper look into this. I assume you have seen a game in a sports arena before, either indoor or outdoor. If you have taken your seat very early, you probably have seen this. Players entering the field 1 to 1.5 hours before kickoff, sometimes even wearing street outfits. And they are walking around, they're having a chat, or are listening to music, and some of them even talk to fans and give autographs. They are going out for a special reason, and that is not primarily marketing, as you might think when you see, for example, Italy's football national team coming out in their finest Italian designer suits. No, the reason is their mental coach who sends them out for one thing: to calibrate their attention, their focus. Now, where does this come from? The most popular model of attention in sport was developed in 1976 by Robert Niedeffer, an American sport psychologist. He basically proposed two dimensions of attention. Number one, direction. Niedeffer said the athlete should be able to deal with any environmental stimuli, which can be both external, so outside of you, like your opponents, your coach, the spectators, and internal, which is inside of you, your thoughts, your feelings, your pain, and The second dimension is width. The athlete should be able to both narrow and broaden the attention when necessary, like you would do with a photo lens, for example. This is a crucial skill for project managers too, because what happens if you're focusing too much on one individual project issue and if you're losing the big picture at the same time, you can easily jeopardize the whole project. Let's have a look again at the German national team as they are calibrating their broad external but also internal attention. They make themselves familiar with every corner of the stadium, but they also check their broad internal state, their feelings. Now, why is it so important for the game? I will give you now a negative example. I was in my 20s and we were on our way to a German Cup match against another Bundesliga team. At that time, our bus driver had no Google Maps or any kind of modern street navigation system. So we ended up in a traffic jam on the highway. It was so bad that we arrived at the arena only 10 minutes before kickoff. And there were around 3,000 spectators waiting. The hosting team was already overheated, so we had just a few minutes to warm up, which actually wasn't the biggest issue. My personal issue came up when I stood at the free throw line for the first time during that game. And when I raised my head towards the backboard to throw the first ball. In that moment, I discovered that the stand in front of me was much larger than I thought, and much more spectators were there than I expected. Now, this irrelevant information processed by the neocortex led to a disturbance of my free throw routine program, which was started by the limbic system and which finally resulted in a failed attempt. Keep in mind, every unexpected neocortex activity during a routine which requires maximum focus leads to additional reactions and feelings triggered by the limbic system. And therefore, this leads to failure. So you see now why it is so important to thoroughly calibrate the broad external attention before kickoff. I still use the Niederfer attention model in our days, every working day. Before I switch off my notebook and call it a day, I check my calendar for tomorrow. And I'm asking myself, whom will I meet and for which purpose? Have I met them before? Did I prepare everything for the meeting? And then I'm looking at tasks. Did I really finish all tasks I was supposed to finish by tomorrow? If not, what do I need to do to complete them? And then I'm checking, are there any constraints tomorrow? What are my lunch plans? Where do I get my lunch? Do I have to pick up my daughter from school or from training? And to get this overall picture, I check both my business and my private calendars together in one view. And that's possible in your Microsoft Outlook or any other software you're using. And when I'm done with all these checks, I switch off my notebook, satisfied and relaxed, and can enjoy the evening because I know that I'm prepared and focused for tomorrow. Let's have a look at the narrow external attention, which is the trickiest part in sport because it's mostly connected to important, crucial actions and decisions, like, for example, shooting a free throw, a penalty, or jumping over a bar. I always like to watch pole vaulters when they are standing at the start line because just before they start running, some of them are turning the pole like you would turn a flashlight when you focus the light. Why do they do this? Well, this is a simple trigger to switch from the broad to the narrow focus. If athletes are used to it, the limbic system gets tricked by this signal that pretends everything which is outside of the imaginary light cone is not existing. So the crowd and all the noise around are simply faded out. And the athlete gets the same feeling as being alone during a normal training. But some top athletes, indeed, they have massive problems maintaining focus during important competitions. We call these athletes training world champions. And one of the most famous training world champions is Asafa Powell, a sprinter from Jamaica, who, on one hand, he has unique physical abilities and who has broken 400 meters world record several times. But on the other hand, Asafa never won a race at important events like the Olympics or World Championships. Well, except with Jamaica's relay team. I will not go into details about Asafa Powell now, but if you are interested, I highly recommend you watching the documentary called Miracle Body by the Japanese director Yoriko Koizumi. Now let's analyze instead the free throw in basketball. For the ones of you who are not familiar with basketball, if a player is executing free throws, the other players must stay around the zone until the last ball has touched the rim or the backboard. The free throw procedure is usually a question of a few seconds. You just come, throw, and then the game moves on. But sometimes there is some side action before you can start throwing. You have referees discussing with coaches, discussing with players or with officials, or maybe all together. So you must wait, having a big crowd in front of you who is trying to distract you as much as possible. Now, what would you do? Would you start to scan the people and read the posters they are holding over their heads? You better not. What a professional player is doing is the following. The professional player is focusing on the one and only goal, and that is to score, to throw this orange ball into the basket. But how to focus on the target? Now, here there are lots of strategies on how to focus and eliminate distractions around you. I used different strategies during my career, but I will share at least one with you. I call it the postman strategy. Now I'm asking you, did you ever watch the postman in your street? Have you seen they are acting like robots? When they deliver their mail, they usually don't miss the target, which is the mailbox. And they usually don't get distracted by anything around them. They just deliver. Now, when I stood at the free throw line in front of a crowd trying to distract me, I put myself in the state of a postman by using an important mental instrument, and that is imagination. I thought, I am the postman, and I will deliver these two letters, one and two. Done. Next. Now, how can you manage to score as many points as possible at work, in your office, in your business life? First of all, learn to focus on one task at a time, only one letter at a time. I never thought of the second free throw before I finished the first. And on the other way around, I never thought of the first when I was focused on the second. And that's crucial in sports, and it can be crucial in business too. When you need focus time, mute your devices and disable any visual notification on your computer. Imagine you are extremely focused and you're designing the ultimate PowerPoint slide, and suddenly Microsoft Teams jumps in from the side with a groundbreaking pop-up message. John Doe has liked your answer on the resilience channel. Come on, just disable that notification stuff completely. And follow rituals. Be a postman or get used to make a special move before starting to work on the task, like the pole vaulter flashlight, for example. Now, I'm hardly assuming that you have heard of Usain Bolt, the best sprinter of all times. He was always a little different than his opponents and probably than many of us. He had a special way to prepare for the race. He once said, before the race, I used to talk to the crowd and I thought about beautiful ladies, fast cars, and pop music. But the interesting part comes now. When the referee called on your marks, Hussein was able to switch into the robot mode immediately. So, what do I mean with the robot mode for sprinters? Just that you can imagine what that means. So, sprinters usually imagine their track being a tunnel, and then they just let their routine program running. And this routine program consists of a fixed number of steps between the start and the finish line. So, with these positive thoughts about music, fast cars, or maybe ladies, Hussein's neocortex was making the limbic system happy immediately before its performance was asked in the race. Why don't you try it out? Think about nice things before joining the next steering committee meeting, and you will see that you will perform much better. And finally, to improve your performance in the office, don't forget to do regular breaks. Why do you think we have timeouts in basketball? We do timeouts to refresh body and mind. But what if you follow my recommendations and still cannot focus, and many other thoughts flood your brain and you cannot stop them? What can you do then? Well, first of all, don't even try to stop all these thoughts. Let them in and let them go. Imagine your brain being um, like a standalone house in a warm summer night, and the light wind is moving the curtains in the open windows, and thoughts are flying with the wind into the house and at the opposite window out again. So, this is a way how you can get your focus back. Or try this: take a clock in your office or at home and just stare at the second hand of the clock and count one with every stroke, like one, 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 but without thinking at anything else. And as soon as other thoughts come into your mind, count up to two, two, two. So repeat this number every second until you have again other thoughts, and so on. And do this exercise for 1 minute and see at which number you end up, and set yourself a goal for the next time. And now we finally come to the team, the fourth dimension of human performance, which is the most fascinating for me because it has so much potential and there's still so much to explore. We all know that 10 times 1 is 10. But when we talk about teams and count the team individuals, then sometimes 10 times 1 is 6. And sometimes 10 times 1 is 20. I don't have a final scientific explanation for this, but I can say that I've seen it. Coming back to my early years, when my father brought me to basketball, I remember that I enjoyed my new sport from the beginning. I became one of the most valuable talents in my club, especially after becoming number one scorer of the under 14 national championships. Now, one of the consequences of being so good in junior times is that your club will try to get you playing in teams of higher age too. So I ended up playing in two different teams. One team was the under 16 and the other team was the under 18. So I had two different coaches. Today, I would say there were two different projects with two different project managers and with many different team members. We had two different approaches, but still one common goal. And that was to play a great season and to make it to the national championships at the end of the season. Now, you should know we were not a top club. So qualifying for the finals was already a very ambitious goal. Let's have a look at the older team. Now, the older team was a bunch of little groups with a few very valuable players, but some of them were often busy with, changing girlfriends and other teenage distractions. The team of my year, which is 1969, we basically consisted of average players, but who always stuck together in good times and in bad times. And I tell you right away, with the older team, we never made it to the finals in 4 years. But with the other team, we did. And the reason is simply the way we acted as a team. Some people think that psychological safety is just a buzzword of our times. But let me tell you one thing, it is not just a buzzword. Maybe some people in your company do not convey the message properly, but psychological safety is crucial for a successful team. Here's a negative example from my older team. One day we were really very close to qualify for the under 18 finals. We just needed to win this one game. And I was 15 years old and sitting on the bench and not really expecting to play in this important game. But the game turned out to be harder than expected. And 2 minutes before end of the game, the fifth player in my team has been disqualified with 5 fouls. So I had to enter the game, otherwise we would have had only 4 players on the field. As we were 6 points behind and anyway having only substitutes on the pitch, nobody was really expecting any surprises, especially the opposing team who did not find it necessary to take a youngster like me seriously, although some of them knew about my good shooting skills. Now, to keep it short, I scored 2 times 3 points in the last 60 seconds of the game and brought us into the extra time. And at the end of the extra time, we were only 4 players on the court and were 2 points behind. When, with a final whistle, I have been fouled when I was desperately shooting from about 10 meters. Then all players had to leave the court, and only the referee and me were standing at the free throw line and waiting for the overheated discussions around the player benches to stop. And when finally the situation calmed down and the referee released the ball for my first of 3 attempts, suddenly I could hear the voice of my coach calling out to me, Felix, 2 are enough. You remember the free throw story in the game after the traffic jam? But this one was much tougher. For a 15-year-old boy during such an important moment, not only because of hearing the voice of your head coach during your routine, but also because of the content. 2 are enough. My neocortex, of course, started to calculate and think, oh, 2 are enough, but that means 1 is not enough. So what happened then was a so-called muscle coactivation, which is triggered by a discord between the neocortex and the limbic system. That is when, for example, the biceps and the triceps are contracting at the same time. So my 3 attempts couldn't get clean at all. And finally, I managed just to score only once, which means we lost the game and the big chance to qualify. And now coming to the team. Although I had done a great job and surprisingly brought my team back into the game 2 minutes before regular end, my 2 missed free throws prevailed in the discussions we had in the locker room after the game. And the problem is that I had expected this. I would call this psychological unsafety. And now to summarize, there were three basic pillars of successful teams which were missing in this team. There was no team spirit, no failure culture, and no psychological safety. In theory, you can have like two Harvard and three Oxford PhDs in your project team, but still fail because it's much more than about skills. Another example, in Europe, we have football clubs which are spending a fortune for superstars, probably more money than some countries on this planet have available in their public budget. And you might think that these teams win every game, but they don't. By far not. Therefore, you don't necessarily need superstars to become successful. First of all, you need a team. So let's switch to my other team, the one with the average players. In the same season when the free throw drama happened with the under 18, we managed to qualify for the under 16 national championships. 16 teams made it to the finals, and we had a very good run there, almost reaching the semifinals. But then finally playing for the fifth place, which was already a great achievement for us. Our opponent team in this last game was one of the favorites on the championship title, but the team surprisingly missed to qualify for the semifinals. And accordingly, the expectation outside of our team was that it will be a relaxed game and my team would be already happy with the achievements so far. And on the other hand, our opponents would anyway be too strong for us. I mean, look at these athletes compared to us. And look at that guy in the middle. He seems to reach the sky. If you are familiar with the NBA of the 90s, you might recognize him. He is one of the two tallest players who ever played in the NBA. His name is George Muresan, 2 meters 31 or 7 feet 7. And George was not only extremely tall and strong, he was also a brilliant and smart player. And then his team was not only about him. The others were also tall, athletic players with high technical and tactical skills. So why worry? I mean, it's fine to finish on the sixth place. Let's bring it fast to an end. But this was not our team's attitude. We always believed that nothing is impossible. And we were grateful for every challenge. But that was, of course, not all. To win the game against George and his team, we elaborated a plan. And when I say we, I mean the coach, myself as the team captain, and a few other teammates who were all involved in the planning. Regarding Big George, our only chance against him was to play fast during the whole game, hoping that he can't keep up with our rhythm. And we knew that this would require a special effort from our side. And that's why the day before, we decided all together to go to bed early and to switch off the lights at 10 p.m. latest. And we didn't need our coach to monitor this. We did it out of our own conviction. And I will never forget that night. I was almost asleep when suddenly somebody knocked at my door. My coach was standing at my door and he was smiling over his whole face. He just said to me, Felix, I got it. Follow me. So we went to his hotel room. I was half asleep, and there his roommate was already snoring, but four other teammates were waiting for us, the starting five. And the coach explained us his latest tactical vision for tomorrow. And he let us, like always, participate in the discussion. And you know what? I still feel that team enthusiasm which filled the room in that night. And I'm sure that these kinds of moments are the sources of success in life. Because when you are in a team flow, then skills don't matter because the power of the individuals can sum up exponentially. 10 times 1 becomes 20. And I don't have to mention that the next day everything went well for us. We ran like crazy, and we were only 1 point behind when our coach asked for a timeout exactly 5 seconds before the final whistle. And during that timeout, the coach explained calm and relaxed what will happen next. We had ball possession, and he spoke only one sentence. He said, Felix will receive the ball and make the 2 points. He said nothing more. And because we trusted him and we trusted all each other, we had no doubts. I don't know how I managed to pass by a few players and finally to escape from George's monster block attempt, but with the final whistle, I made the 2 points. And then, when all the tension was gone, we celebrated. Not only the fifth place, but also the fact that we had overcome an apparently impossible challenge as a team. And also because we had realized how strong a team can be. You know, I'm currently working for a large corporation with over 100,000 employees. And sometimes I'm thinking, what if we would act all together like my basketball team? How incredibly strong we could be. And sometimes I think, what if all 7.5 billion people on this planet would act all together like my basketball team? And this is the end. Thank you for watching.